Now, for the next couple of weeks, I'll tell you the things that I did when I was away. And there's a little place called Santa Rosa. There's a Charles Schulz Museum, and he's the artist, and he wrote the comic strip that Charlie Brown and Snoopy. And I went and visited a friend and her little boy that I baptized 12 years ago. And we agreed to meet there. It was kind of equidistant from her house and where I was staying. And they had the different things that were in that museum. There was Snoopy, what he looked like at the beginning and how he evolved. It was all these wood cutouts that this lady had made, very well done, and how many changes, very subtly, but over the course of Snoopy's lifetime, by the time he was taken down the Red Baron and the Sopwith Camel. Anyway, if you don't read Charles Schulz, that's okay. But the idea in that first reading from Ezekiel is that people change. And it talks about how when we were little that we depended on, well, our mother and our dad. We depended on others. And then we got, well, independent. And that's when we get ourselves into trouble. Then we get caught up in, well, how we can do it our way. We get caught up in our own beauty, our own strength. And that's when we turn away from God. But how faithful he is, that he never changes, that he knows that there's something called pride, which is contempt for God. And that's something that all human beings have to go through in different ways at different times. His grace is sufficient, so that's why the gospel is all about fidelity. God's faithful, we're not, but he doesn't give up. Charles Schulz, there's a book about his experience of religion, and I want to order it because I'm curious. He had a lot of religion in his different comic strips. He said that when he was in World War II as a young man, that affected him, and all of his struggles later in life were because of that time. I'm curious because his first marriage ended very sadly, and he went through his own brokenness, his own infidelity. His second marriage went better. His second wife is still alive. They had a family and grandkids and everything else. What is it about human beings that's so frail? Why do people give up? Why do they turn away from God? Why do we find in our own hearts, even after we've been forgiven, there's still some sadness, there's still some regret? And so with God's help, like that woman in the Old Testament, we are still growing. We're still being healed. We're still becoming what God wanted us to be. It's never over until God calls us home. It's never too late to begin, but it's never too early to get going now. Don't procrastinate. Don't put off the conversion that can begin today. Religion from God's perspective is about duty, about giving back to God what belongs to him, which is everything. How does God do it? First, he gives us his best. On this altar, his son and his sacrifice, which gives sinners hope. God's faithful. You and me, not so much. But the hope is in him, and so is the healing.